I used to believe safety was just math, a specific number in a savings account that meant I could never be hurt again. But Marla didn't need a weapon to drain every cent I had earned. She just needed my father's silence and a pen. When I walked into her perfect new living room with a wrapped box, she smiled, expecting a peace offering. She had no idea I was handing her a ruin of her own making. Control is a quiet thing. It does not look like power or dominance. It looks like a spreadsheet with perfectly aligned columns. It looks like a morning routine that never deviates by more than 5 minutes. It looks like the silence of an apartment in Briar Glen, Massachusetts, where the only noise is the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of my own steady breathing. I was 33 years old, and I had spent the last decade building a fortress out of boredom. That is what I called it when people asked why I did not take spontaneous trips to Europe, or why I drove a sedan that was 7 years old. I told them I liked simplicity. The truth was that I liked safety. I liked knowing exactly where the floor was so that nobody could pull it out from under me again. My childhood had been a lesson in gravity. I learned early that adults were capable of making choices that caused the ground to disappear. It was not malice, and it was not abuse. It was just incompetence. It was my mother forgetting to pay the electric bill because she was chasing a new business venture that involved selling essential oils. It was my father, Gordon, investing my college fund in a friend's restaurant concept that folded in 6 months. It was coming home to find the lights off, the fridge empty, and my parents smiling nervously, telling me it was all part of a grand adventure. I did not want an adventure. I wanted a lease with my name on it. I wanted a savings account that grew every second Friday of the month. I wanted a life that was boring, predictable, and entirely mine. And I had it. I worked as a supply chain analyst, a job that suited me because it was all about tracking where things went and ensuring nothing was lost. I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment on the edge of town, far enough from the city center to be quiet, but close enough to the highway for my commute. I had a retirement fund. I had an emergency fund. I had a separate savings account labeled Independence, which was the money I would use if the world decided to break again. Then my father married Marla Wynne. Gordon Perry was a man who needed to be managed. He was kind, soft-hearted, and perpetually optimistic, which made him dangerous to anyone who relied on him for stability. When my mother passed away 4 years ago, I had stepped in to help him navigate the grief and the paperwork, but I had kept my finances strictly separate. I loved him, but I did not trust his judgment. Marla was his new judgment. She was 55, polished to a high shine, and moved through the world with the frantic energy of someone running from something. She sold high-end residential real estate, or at least she said she did. She wore cream-colored blazers and drove a leased luxury SUV that always smelled of vanilla car freshener. From the moment she met me, she decided we were going to be best friends. She did not ask. She announced, "I am so glad to finally have a daughter," she had said at the wedding reception, clutching my arm tight enough to leave a mark. "We are going to be such a team." Eliza, a fresh start for all of us. I had smiled and removed her hand gently. "I am happy for you and Dad." I said. She insisted I call her Bonus Mom. I refused. I called her Marla. 6 months after the wedding, they announced they were moving. They had bought a house in Wyndham Ridge, a neighborhood that was 2 tax brackets above where my father should have been living. It was a sprawling development of McMansions with 3-car garages and lawns that looked like golf courses. "We are leveling up," Marla told me over dinner, her eyes gleaming. "Gordon deserves this. We deserve this." I looked at my father. He was cutting his steak with too much focus, avoiding my eyes. "Can you afford the property taxes?" I asked. Marla laughed, a tinkling sound that set my teeth on edge. "Oh, Eliza, you are always so worried. You have to spend money to make money. It is an investment. It was not my money, so I let it go." I retreated to my apartment and my spreadsheets, but the boundaries I had built were about to be tested. A week later, my father called. He sounded small. "Eliza, honey," he said, "Marla and I are crunching the numbers for the closing costs. We are just a little short on the cash reserves the bank wants to see. It is just a liquidity issue. We have the money. It is just tied up in Marla's other properties. I closed my eyes. I knew this script. I had heard it a dozen times growing up. How much I asked. 5,000, he said. Just until Marla closes her next deal. 2 months tops. I looked at my independence account. I had the money, but the rule was never to lend what you could not afford to lose. I will give you $1,000. I said, as a housewarming gift. I do not expect it back, but that is it, Dad. I am not a bank. He sighed, relieved. Thank you. Honey, you are a lifesaver. I wrote the check the next day. I put gift, house fund in the memo line. I took a picture of the check. I handed it to him in an envelope, along with a sticky note that said, "Congratulations on the new house. This is a one-time contribution. Love, Eliza." I thought that was the end of it. 2 weeks later, Marla cornered me at a family dinner. She pulled out her phone and waved it in my face. "You need to download Family Finance," she said. "It is this amazing app. Gordon and I are using it to track our expenses for the move. I want to add you to the family circle so we can all be transparent. It is a bonding thing." I took a step back. I do not need an app. "Marla, my finances are separate, but we are family," she said, her smile faltering just a fraction. "Transparency builds trust." "Eliza, unless you have something to hide, I am 33 years old." I said, "I do not share a bank account with my father, and I certainly do not share one with you." She turned to my father, her face crumbling into a practiced expression of hurt. "Gordon, tell her. I am just trying to include her." My father looked at me with pleading eyes. "Just download it. Eliza, you do not have to link your main accounts. Just show us you are okay. Marla worries about you. She thinks you live too frugally." I felt a spike of irritation. "I live frugally because I do not want to end up asking my children for money." I wanted to say, "Instead, I compromised. It was a mistake. I will not use the app," I said. "But if it makes you feel better, Dad, I will show you my budget spreadsheet. Just you, not Marla." I sat down with him later that night. I opened my laptop and showed him the summary tab of my main savings account at Larkline Credit Union. I wanted him to see that I was safe. I wanted him to stop worrying so he would stop letting Marla push him into intruding on my life. "See," I said, pointing to the total, "I am fine. I have a cushion." He stared at the screen, his eyes widening slightly at the number. It was $75,000. It was 10 years of skipped vacations, brown bag lunches, and overtime shifts. "Wow," he said softly. "You have done really well. Eliza." I closed the laptop. "I am fine. Dad, please tell Marla to back off." I did not see the hunger in his eyes then. I only saw relief. I thought I had bought myself some peace. 6 weeks passed. The invitation arrived in a heavy cream envelope with gold lettering. It looked like a wedding invitation, but it was just for a housewarming party. The Perry Wynn residence. It read, "A celebration of new beginnings." There was a list of instructions. Cocktail attire requested, no children, valet parking provided. It was scheduled for a Saturday afternoon in mid-October. I RSVP'd yes, because I had to. I bought a new dress, navy blue and conservative, because Marla had made comments about my wardrobe looking like I worked in a library basement. I was dreading it. I knew it would be a performance. Marla would hire a photographer. There would be speeches. I would have to stand there and smile while she called me her bonus daughter, and my father drank too much champagne to numb his anxiety about the mortgage. The morning of the Tuesday before the party, I was at my desk at work. It was 10:15 in the morning. The office was quiet. I was working on a logistics forecast for the upcoming quarter. My personal phone buzzed on the desk. I glanced at it, expecting a spam call. It was a text message from Larkline Credit Union. Fraud alert. The text read, "Larkline CU. Did you authorize a transfer of $12,000 to Wynn Renovations, LLC? Reply yes or no." My heart stopped. It did not speed up. It simply stopped beating for a full second. I stared at the screen. $12,000. Before I could type no, a second text arrived. Larkline CU transfer of $8,000 scheduled. Authorized device confirmed. I grabbed the phone. My fingers were cold. I opened the Larkline banking app. My Face ID failed because my hands were shaking. I typed in my passcode. The dashboard loaded. My balance, usually a comforting, solid number, was wrong. It was drastically wrong. 2 pending transactions sat at the top of the history. Transfer to Win Renovations, LLC, $12,000. Transfer to Win Renovations, LLC, $8,000. Wire transfer, pending $15,000. I felt a physical blow to my stomach, as if someone had punched me. $35,000, almost half of everything I had. I did not call. I stood up. Eliza, my coworker Dave, asked from the next cubicle, "You look pale. I have to go." I said. My voice sounded hollow. "Family emergency." I drove to the Larkline branch on Main Street. I did not speed. I drove with a terrifying, hyper-focused clarity. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I was running the calculations in my head. If this money was gone, my timeline for buying my own condo was pushed back 5 years. If this money was gone, my safety net was shredded. The branch was quiet. It smelled of carpet cleaner and stale coffee. I walked up to the desk of the branch manager, a woman named Mrs. Higgins, who had helped me open my first account when I was 18. "Eliza," she said, smiling, "what brings you in?" "Someone is draining my account." I said. The words came out flat, robotic. Her smile vanished. "Come with me." We sat in her office. She typed furiously on her keyboard. I watched her face. I wanted her to look shocked. I wanted her to say it was a mistake, a glitch, a Russian hacker. She stopped typing and frowned. "Eliza, these transfers were made online," she said slowly. "I know." I said, "I did not make them." She turned the monitor so I could see. "They were initiated from a trusted device." She said, "An iPad. The device name is MW Home Office, Marla, MW, Marla Wynn." I felt the bile rise in my throat. "I do not own an iPad." I said, "It was added to your trusted devices list 2 weeks ago." Mrs. Higgins said, "The verification code was sent to your email." My email, the old Yahoo account I barely used anymore. The one I had logged into on my father's computer last Christmas to print a return label. Mrs. Higgins clicked another tab. "And there is an authorization form on file for the wire transfer. It was uploaded yesterday. Show me." I said. She printed the document and slid it across the desk. It was a standard wire authorization form. It had my name, my account number, and my address, and at the bottom, it had my signature. I stared at the ink. It was my name. It was my loop on the L. It was the sharp point on the Z. But it was wrong. When I sign my name, I lift the pen between the first and last name. This signature was continuous. It flowed too smoothly. It was a performance of my signature, not the reality of it. "This is not me," I said. My voice was shaking now. "That is a forgery." Mrs. Higgins looked sympathetic but wary. "Eliza, this is a very high-quality match, and with the device authentication, it is my stepmother." I said, "She must have gotten my password." "Did you share your password?" Mrs. Higgins asked gently. "No, never." "Did you write it down?" "No." "Did anyone have access to your devices?" I thought about the dinner, the laptop. I had typed my password in front of my father. I had left the room to use the bathroom while the spreadsheet was open. Had Marla been there? Had she installed a keylogger? Had she just watched my fingers? Or had my father told her freeze it? I said, "Freeze everything. We can stop the pending wire," she said. "The $15,000 is safe, but the other 2 transfers, the $20,000, those have already cleared to the receiving bank. Get them back." I said, "We will file a fraud claim." She said, "But Eliza, I have to be honest. When the credentials match and there's a signed form, and the recipient is a known associate, it gets complicated. The system views this as an authorized dispute, not necessarily criminal theft. She stole $20,000 from me. I said, "We will do our best," she said. I left the bank with a sheaf of papers and a frozen account. I sat in my car in the parking lot and screamed. It was a short, guttural sound that hurt my throat. Then I put the car in drive. I did not go home. I went to Wyndham Ridge. The house was massive. It was a white colonial with black shutters and a driveway that could fit 10 cars. It looked perfect. It looked expensive. My father's car was in the driveway. Marla's SUV was gone. Good. I walked up the front path. I did not knock. I still had a key to their old place. But I realized I did not have a key to this one. I rang the doorbell. My father opened the door. He was wearing a polo shirt and holding a coffee mug. He looked surprised, then happy. "Eliza," he said, "this is a surprise. Marla is out at a showing. But come in. We are just getting the living room set up." I walked past him into the foyer. It smelled of fresh paint and lilies. "Where is my money?" "Dad," I asked. He froze, the door still open behind him. "What? $20,000, I said. "Transferred from my Larkline account to Wynn Renovations. Where is it?" His face went through a complex series of gymnastics, confusion, then realization, then a sudden, defensive hardening that I had never seen before. He closed the door. "Eliza, keep your voice down. The neighbors. I do not care about the neighbors." I said, "Did you do it?" "No," he said. "Of course not." "Then it was Marla." I said, "Marla would never steal from you." He said quickly, too quickly. "Then how did Wynn Renovations get my money?" I asked. "That is her company." "Dad." He walked into the living room and set his mug down on a glass coaster. He looked at the floor. He looked at the high ceilings. He looked everywhere but at me. "Look," he said, "there was a mix-up with the contractors. We needed to clear a payment to keep the work going on the sunroom before the party. Marla mentioned she might need to borrow some liquidity." "Borrow," I said, without asking. "That is stealing. Dad." "She was going to pay it back next week," he said. "She is waiting on a commission check. She knew you had it sitting there. She said you showed us the account. Remember, she said you wanted to help. I showed you the account to prove I was safe. I said, I explicitly told you I was not a bank." He rubbed his face with his hands. "It is just a misunderstanding." "Eliza, you are making it sound like a crime." "It is a crime," I shouted. "It is wire fraud. It is forgery. There is a form with my signature on it." "Dad, who signed it?" He flinched. I stared at him. The silence stretched, thin and terrible. "Did you sign it?" I asked. My voice dropped to a whisper. He looked at me then, and I saw the misery in his eyes. He looked trapped. "Marla handles the paperwork," he said. "She puts things in front of me, and I sign them. It is a lot of papers. Eliza, the mortgage, the contractors, the insurance. You signed my name." "I thought it was a consent form," he said. "She said it was a family authorization so we could manage the accounts together. I did not read the fine print." "You signed my name," I repeated. He took a step toward me. "Eliza, please, we are a family. The money will be back in your account before you know it. Marla promised. It is just $20,000. I stopped. I had not told him the total was $20,000. I had told him about the transfers. I had not done the math out loud. "You knew the exact amount," I said. He stopped moving. "You knew." I said, "You knew exactly how much she took. You were briefed." "Eliza, listen, no," I said. I backed away toward the door. I looked at this man, this weak, smiling man who had raised me. I had spent my entire adult life trying to protect myself from the chaos he attracted. I thought I had succeeded. I thought if I just loved him from a safe distance, I would be okay. But he had let the chaos into my vault. He had handed the key to a woman who saw me not as a daughter, but as a resource to be harvested. "I am going to the police," I said. "No, you are not," he said. He sounded desperate now. "Eliza, if you do that, you will ruin Marla. You will ruin this house. You will humiliate us in front of everyone. You humiliated me." I said, "You stole from me. I am your father," he shouted, "and that is the only reason I'm not burning this house down right now." I said, I turned and walked out. I heard him calling my name as I walked down the driveway. But I did not look back. I drove home in silence. I did not cry. The tears had dried up in the bank parking lot. Now, there was only a cold, hard knot in the center of my chest. I entered my apartment. It was exactly as I had left it. The air was still. The spreadsheet was still open on my laptop screen, glowing in the dim light. I sat down at my desk. I looked at the numbers. I had spent years believing that if I just followed the rules, if I was just disciplined enough, I would be safe. I believed that money was a shield. I was wrong. Money was not a shield. Money was blood, and the people who were supposed to protect me had just cut my throat. I closed the laptop. My hands were still shaking, but my mind was beginning to settle. It was shifting gears. The part of me that was a scared daughter was retreating, hiding away in the dark. The part of me that was a supply chain analyst, the part that understood tracking, leverage, and consequences was stepping forward. They wanted to play with numbers, fine. I pulled a fresh notepad from my drawer. I picked up a pen. I wrote the date at the top of the page. Then I wrote Marla Wynn. Then I wrote Gordon Perry. Then I wrote $20,000. I underlined the amount 3 times. I was not going to let this go. I was not going to be the dutiful daughter who swallowed her anger to keep the peace. I was going to get my money back. And then, I was going to give them a housewarming gift they would never forget. The banking investigator was named Mr. Henderson. He had a voice like dry paper and eyes that looked at me without really seeing me. We sat in a small, glass-walled office at the regional headquarters of Larkline Credit Union. 3 days after the money vanished, I had spent those 3 days in a state of suspended animation. I went to work. I sat in meetings. I updated spreadsheets. But my mind was a looping tape of the moment I saw the balance drop. Mr. Henderson slid a folder across the desk. "We have reviewed your fraud affidavit." "Ms. Perry," he said, "and we have reviewed the digital forensic logs." I leaned forward. The chair was uncomfortable, the fabric scratching against my legs. And I asked, "When do I get the provisional credit?" He folded his hands. "We cannot issue a provisional credit at this time." The air left the room. "Excuse me," I asked. "The transaction was authenticated," he said. "The device used was a recognized iPad that had been added to your profile using 2-factor authentication sent to your email address. The wire transfer form was signed. The signature matches the samples we have on file with a 95% probability. It is a forgery." I said, "I told you that." Mr. Henderson sighed. It was a tired sound. "Miss Perry, when a transaction is conducted by a family member, and there is evidence of credential sharing or access to devices, the bank considers this a civil matter. It falls under the category of friendly fraud." Friendly fraud. The term felt like a slap in the face. There was nothing friendly about it. "So you are saying you will not help me?" I said. "I am saying that unless you can provide a police report proving identity theft and a forensic report proving the signature is forged, our hands are tied." He said, "You authorized the device. The device authorized the transfer. As far as our system is concerned, you gave the keys to the thief." I walked out of the office into the bright, harsh sunlight of the parking lot. I felt nauseous. The system was designed to stop hackers in Russia, not stepmothers in Wyndham Ridge. I sat in my car and gripped the steering wheel. I closed my eyes and forced myself to think. I forced myself to stop feeling like a victim and start thinking like an analyst. How did she do it? I replayed the last 6 months in my head. I combed through every interaction I had with Marla. I looked for the cracks. And then I saw them. I remembered a Sunday brunch 3 months ago. Marla had been doing a crossword puzzle. "Eliza, what was the name of that first street you lived on?" she had asked. "The one with the big oak tree, Maple Terrace." I had said. "Why 7 letters?" she had muttered, smiling. "Fits perfectly." Maple Terrace was the answer to my security question. "What was the street you grew up on?" I remembered a phone call 2 months ago. She was helping my father organize his old filing cabinets. "Honey, I am shredding some old tax documents, she had said. Just checking. Your mother's maiden name was Clark with an E or without with an E? I had said, Clark. My second security question. I remembered the dinner where she pushed the family finance app. She had been so insistent on transparency. When I refused, she had pivoted. Well, at least make sure your beneficiaries are up to date. She had said, God forbid something happens to you. I can help you file the paperwork if you want. I have a notary at the office. I had not let her file it, but I had talked about it. I had told her I banked at Larkline. I had given her the pieces of the puzzle, one by one, thinking I was making polite conversation. I had handed her the combination to the safe. Digit by digit, over coffee and appetizers. She had not hacked me. She had socially engineered me. I started the car. I was not going home. I was going to the scene of the crime. My father's house in Wyndham Ridge was still a construction zone of boxes and bubble wrap, even though they had technically moved in weeks ago. Marla called it curation. I called it chaos. I pulled into the driveway. My father's car was there. Marla's SUV was there. I walked to the front door and used the key my father had given me, the one Marla had made a big show of handing over, saying, "This is your home too." I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The house was quiet. I could hear the low murmur of voices from the backyard. Near the patio, they were outside. I did not go to them, not yet. I walked into the dining room. This was the command center. Marla had turned the formal dining table into a temporary office while the study was being painted. It was covered in stacks of paper, swatches of fabric, and architectural blueprints. And there, sitting on the sideboard, was a sleek, black machine, a printer scanner copier. I walked over to it. The power light was blinking green. Next to it was a stack of file folders. I flipped through them. Wynn Renovations, Invoices, Briar Glen Landscaping, Crown Alder Mortgage. I opened the mortgage folder. It was thick. I thumbed through the pages. Loan estimates, truth in lending disclosures, and then, near the back, a document titled Gift Letter. I froze. A gift letter is a document banks require when a homebuyer uses money from a relative for a down payment. It states that the money is a gift, not a loan, and does not need to be repaid. I pulled it out. There, in black and white, was a statement declaring that Eliza Perry was gifting $20,000 to Gordon Perry and Marla Wynn for the purchase of the property at 44 Oak Ridge Lane. And there was my signature again, the looping L, the sharp Z. I looked at the printer. I lifted the lid of the scanner bed. There was nothing on the glass, but on the small LCD screen, the history log was visible. Recent job scanned to email. Destination Marla Wynn, realestategmail.com. Time, 3 days ago. She had scanned the forgery right here. She had probably practiced my signature on this very table, sipping her morning coffee while I was at work earning the money she was stealing. Eliza. I turned around. Marla was standing in the doorway. She was wearing a white linen caftan that looked expensive and effortless. She held a glass of iced tea. She did not look guilty. She looked annoyed, like I was a salesperson who had bypassed a no-soliciting sign. "What are you doing?" she asked. I held up the gift letter. "I'm admiring your art." I said, "You are getting better at the capital E, but you still press too hard on the downstroke." She sighed and walked into the room, setting her tea on a coaster. She did not snatch the paper from me. She just crossed her arms. "You are snooping, Eliza. That is beneath you. Stealing my life savings is beneath you." "Marla," I said, "or maybe it is not. Maybe this is exactly where you live." She laughed. It was a light, airy sound. "Stealing," she repeated. "You are so dramatic. We are a family. Families move resources around where they are needed. It is called liquidity management. I am not a resource," I said. "I am a person, and that was my money. It was idle cash," she said. "It was sitting in a low-interest savings account doing absolutely nothing. I put it to work. We needed to close the gap for the appraisal, and the renovation costs went over. As soon as the refinance goes through in 6 months, you will get it back. With interest, if you are going to be petty about it." I stared at her. The absolute lack of shame was breathtaking. She truly believed that because she needed it. She was entitled to it. You forged my signature. I said, that is a felony. She waved a hand dismissively. I signed for you because you were busy. I knew you would want to help your father. Gordon was so stressed. Eliza, his blood pressure has been through the roof. I did it to save him the worry. I did it for him. Do not use him as a shield. I said, I am not. She said, I am telling you the reality. We are building a future here. An asset. Eventually, this house will be yours. You should be thanking me for securing your inheritance. My hands were shaking. I wanted to scream. I wanted to flip the table, but I knew that was what she wanted. She wanted me to be the hysterical stepdaughter so she could be the calm, rational matriarch. I am not waiting 6 months, I said. I want it back now. She sighed again, like she was dealing with a toddler asking for candy before dinner. I do not have it right now. Eliza, it is in the house. It is in the walls and the floors. It is equity. She opened her purse, which was sitting on a chair. She pulled out a checkbook. Look, she said, I know this is stressful for you. You are so rigid with your money. It must be scary to see the numbers change. She wrote something on a check and tore it off. She held it out to me. Here, she said. I looked at the check. It was for $500. What is this? I asked. A gesture. She said, for your trouble. Go get a massage. Buy yourself a nice dinner. Stop obsessing over the spreadsheets and relax. I looked at the check. $500. It was hush money. It was an allowance. It was a pat on the head. I did not take it. You think you can buy me off with groceries? I asked. I think you're overreacting, she said, her voice hardening. And I think if you make a scene, you will break your father's heart. Do you want that? Do you want to be the reason he has a stroke? Because that is what will happen if you drag the police into this. I looked at her. I saw the steel behind the linen. She was holding my father hostage. I will not take the check, I said. Suit yourself, she said, dropping it on the table. But do not say I did not try to make it right. I walked out. I did not see my father. I did not want to see him. I drove straight to Hart Dorsey Legal Group. My best friend, Nina Caldwell, was a senior paralegal there. She was the opposite of me, loud, messy, and disorganized in her personal life, but a shark when it came to paperwork. I met her in the break room. I told her everything. I showed her the photo I had snapped of the gift letter on my phone. She did not offer me tea. She did not hug me. She slammed her hand on the table. That witch, Nina said. That absolute, polished witch. What do? I asked. The bank says it is a civil matter. It is not a civil matter, Nina said. It is fraud, but the bank is lazy. They do not want to unwind a wire transfer because it is messy. They want you to give up. I cannot give up, I said. That money was my freedom. Nina pulled out a yellow legal pad. Okay, she said. Stop crying. Crying does not get refunds. Documentation gets refunds. We need to build a paper trail so thick they trip over it. She started writing. Step 1, she said. You send a formal demand letter to Marla and your father. Certified mail. Return receipt requested. You state clearly that the transfer was unauthorized and the signature was forged. My father. I asked. I have to send it to him too. He is on the deed. Nina said. He is a beneficiary of the fraud. You have to name him. I felt a pang of guilt, sharp and deep. Step 2, she continued. You request your full file from the bank, not just the statements, the access logs, the IP addresses, the metadata. We need to prove that the device that authorized the transfer was in Wyndham Ridge, not in your apartment. Step 3, she said, looking up at me. Check your credit report. Right now. Why I asked. Because, Eliza, Nina said, her voice serious. If she forged a gift letter, she needed it for a mortgage. And if she needed a gift letter, it means her debt-to-income ratio was too high, which means she might have used you for more than just cash. I pulled out my phone. I opened the credit monitoring app I checked once a month. I logged in. My score had dropped. It was usually 800. Now it was 7:40. I scrolled down to inquiries. There was a hard pull from 3 weeks ago. Creditor Crown Alder Mortgage. Reason, cosigner. Evaluation. I felt the room spin. Cosigner. I whispered. Nina swore softly. She did not just take your cash. Nina said. She put you on the loan. Or she tried to. I clicked on the details. Application status conditional approval. Borrowers. Gordon Perry, Marla Wynne, Eliza Perry. I stared at the screen. I was on the mortgage. I was legally responsible for a house I did not live in. For a debt I did not agree to. This is impossible, I said. I would have to sign closing documents. Did they close yet? Nina asked. The party is Saturday. I said. They moved in. But Nina grabbed my arm. In Massachusetts, you can do a dry closing or occupy before final funding if the lender allows it. But if they are waiting on a final signature, Eliza, you need to find out if that loan has funded. I stood up. I need to talk to my father. I said, alone. Be careful. Nina warned. Marla will be guarding him. I will catch him when she is not there. I said, I knew my father's schedule. He went to a coffee shop in the city every Wednesday afternoon to meet with his old retired buddies. It was the one part of his life Marla had not curated yet. I waited in the parking lot of the coffee shop on 4th Street. It was raining lightly, a gray drizzle that matched my mood. He came out at 2 o'clock. He looked older than I remembered. His shoulders were slumped. He walked to his car slowly. I got out and intercepted him. Dad, I said. He jumped. He looked at me, and his face crumpled. Eliza, he said, I did not know you were coming. Get in the car. Dad, I said. We sat in his sedan. It smelled of the vanilla air freshener Marla insisted on. I showed him the phone. I showed him the credit report. Am I on the mortgage, Dad? I asked. He would not look at me. He gripped the steering wheel like it was a life raft. Gordon, look at me. Am I a cosigner on your house? He let out a long, shuddering breath. The bank said we needed a stronger profile. He whispered, Marla said it was just a formality. She said we would refinance in 6 months and take you off. She said it would help your credit score to have a property attached to your name. Help my credit score? I laughed. It was a harsh, barking sound. By saddling me with $1 million of debt, Dad, do you have any idea what this means if you miss a payment? They come after me. If you default, they take my assets. We will not default, he insisted. Turning to me, Marla is a professional. She sells houses for a living. She steals for a living, I shouted. He flinched. Why did you let her do it? I asked. The anger was draining out of me, replaced by a deep, aching sadness. Why did you let her use me? He looked down at his hands. She said you owed the family. He mumbled. I froze. What? She said. I paid for your college, he said, his voice barely audible. She said I helped you with your first car. She said families support each other. She said you had all that money sitting there because I gave you a head start. And now it was time for you to give back. I felt cold. I felt ice in my veins. You paid for 2 years of state college. I said, I worked 3 jobs to pay for the rest. I bought my own car. I paid my own rent. I have never asked you for a dime since I was 22. I know, he said. I know. Eliza. But she makes it sound so logical when she says it. She said we were struggling to make this dream happen, and you were just watching us struggle. So you decided I owed you. I said, you decided my savings were actually yours. No, he said, I did not decide. I stopped arguing. I looked at him. I saw the truth. He was not evil. He was just weak. He was a man who wanted a shiny new life and a beautiful wife. And the price of admission was his daughter's security, and he had paid it. Did you sign the application? I asked. He nodded. Did you know I was listed as a co-signer? He hesitated. I signed a stack of papers. Eliza. She brought them to me one night with a glass of wine. She said, sign here, here, and here. She said it was the family consent form. There is no such thing as a family consent form. Dad, I know that now, he cried. But I trusted her. I trusted that she knew what she was doing. I did not read them. I just signed. You signed my name. No, he said. I signed mine. She must have signed yours later, but you enabled it. I said, you signed the document that listed me as a borrower. You opened the door, and she walked through it. He reached for my hand. I pulled it away. Eliza, please, he said. We can fix this. Just give us time. Do not ruin the party. Do not ruin the closing. If the bank finds out there is a dispute, they will pull the loan. We will lose the deposit. We will lose the house. I looked at him. I looked at the man who used to carry me on his shoulders. The man who taught me how to ride a bike. He was gone. In his place was a stranger who was afraid of losing a house he could not afford. You are asking me to pay for your house. I said, you are asking me to let you steal $20,000 and my credit rating so you can live in Wyndham Ridge. I am asking you to be my daughter, he said. I am your daughter. I said, that is why this hurts. I opened the car door. I am not going to the police today. I said. He slumped with relief. Thank you, honey. But I am not done. I said. I got out of the car and slammed the door. I stood in the rain and watched him drive away. He thought he had won. He thought he had guilted me into silence. He thought the family card was a trump card that beat everything else. But he was wrong. He had just destroyed the last thing that protected him, my trust. I took out my phone. I called Nina. Did you find out about the closing, I asked? Yes, Nina said. They have a final walkthrough scheduled for Friday. Funding is set for Monday morning. The housewarming party is basically a celebration of the keys being handed over. Okay, I said. What are you going to do? Nina asked. I'm going to get my file. I said. I am going to get every piece of metadata, every log, every forged signature, and then I am going to the party. I said, Eliza, that is a bad idea. Nina said, it will be a scene. No. I said, it won't be a scene. It will be a presentation. I hung up. I looked at the gray sky. Marla wanted a cosigner. She was going to get one. She wanted a family member who was involved in the details I was going to be involved. I was going to be so involved that she would choke on it. I walked to my car. My sadness was gone. It had calcified into something hard and sharp. My father was right about one thing. I did owe the family. I owed them the truth, and I was going to deliver it in person. The shift from victim to investigator did not happen all at once. It happened in increments, fueled by the cold. Hard realization that nobody was coming to save me. My father had chosen his side. The bank had chosen its bureaucracy. And the police would only see a domestic dispute. If I wanted justice, I had to build it myself. Brick by evidentiary brick. I stopped calling my father. I stopped checking the balance on my drained savings account every hour. Instead, I went back to the Larkline Credit Union branch. Not as a weeping daughter, but as an auditor. I sat with a different banker this time. A young man named Kevin who looked terrified of my stillness. I want the full metadata log for the transaction. I said, I want the IP address, the device MAC address, and the timestamp of the upload. We usually only provide that to law enforcement. Kevin said, it is my data. I said, it is my account. Print it. He printed it. I took the pages to my car and laid them out on the passenger seat. The sun was bright, casting harsh shadows on the paper. I ran my finger down the column of data until I found the authorization event. Device name MW, home office, IP, location Wyndham Ridge, MA, upload time, 10:42 in the morning on Tuesday. I knew exactly where Marla was at 10:42 on Tuesday. She posts her entire life on social media. I pulled up her Instagram. There was a photo of her new dining room. The sun streaming in, with the caption, Office Views, Making Dreams Happen. In the corner of the photo, blurry but unmistakable, was the black printer scanner. But the most damning detail was the verification method. To add a trusted device, the bank sends a 6-digit code. Code sent to Eliza. perry.92yahoo.com. That was the email account I had created in high school. I hadn't used it for serious business in 5 years. I stared at the paper, my mind racing. How did she get into it? Then I remembered Christmas. I had gone to my father's old house for the holidays. We were printing return labels for a sweater that didn't fit. I had logged into my Yahoo account on the family desktop computer in the den. Did you log out? I closed my eyes. I couldn't remember. I usually did. But Marla was there, offering eggnog, asking questions, creating distractions. If I had just closed the browser tab without clicking sign out, the session token would have remained active. She didn't hack me. She just walked through a door I had left cracked open 6 months ago. She had been waiting. She had been watching. And the moment she needed liquidity, she walked in and took it. I drove to Nina's office at Hart Dorsey. The law firm was a glass and steel tower that felt like a fortress. Nina met me in the conference room, her arms full of files. "Okay," she said. "I did some digging on the property records." "What did you find?" I asked. "The closing is definitely scheduled for Monday," she said. "But here's the interesting part. The lender is Crown Alder Mortgage, and the title company is Juniper Key Title Services. We need to send them a preservation letter." I said, "We need to do more than that." Nina said, "We need to find out exactly how they see you. Are you a co-borrower, a guarantor, or just a generous donor?" We drafted the request together. We used formal legal language, citing the Fair Credit Reporting Act, and demanding a copy of all documents bearing my name or social security number. We faxed them. Then we called. I got a clerk at Juniper Key on the line. Her name was Brenda. She sounded harried. "I am calling to verify the status of a file for Perry and Wynn." I said, "I am one of the parties involved. Eliza Perry." "Hold on," Brenda said. I could hear typing. "Okay, I see the file. We are just waiting on the final clear to close from the lender. I need to confirm something." I said, "My name. How is it listed on the settlement statement? Let me look." She said, "Okay, you are not on the title. You are not on the deed." I let out a breath. That was good. I wasn't buying the house. "But you are listed here in the funding section." She continued, "Gift funds contributor, $20,000, and there is a note here. Consigner evaluation for credit enhancement, but that condition was waived after the gift funds were verified." "Waived?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "With the $20,000 down, the loan-to-value ratio dropped enough that they didn't need a co-signer. They just needed the cash." The room spun slightly. Marla had tried to make me a co-signer. That was the credit inquiry. But when that got too complicated, or maybe when she realized I would have to be physically present to sign the mortgage note, she switched tactics. She just stole the cash instead. She staged it. I told Nina after I hung up. She made it look like I volunteered the money so she wouldn't need my credit score anymore. She used my money to buy her way out of needing my permission. Nina tapped her pen on the table. "This is a problem." "Eliza," she said. "Why?" I asked. "It proves she stole it." "No," Nina said. "To the bank. It proves you gave it. The narrative fits. You applied to be a co-signer. Then you decided to just give a gift instead. It looks like a family helping family. It doesn't look like theft. It looks like generosity." I felt a surge of nausea. Marla had weaponized my own identity against me. She had painted a picture of a loving, supportive stepdaughter, and she had used my money to buy the paint. "I have to stop the closing." I said, "If you stop the closing without a court order, you could be liable for damages." Nina said, "And getting a court order takes weeks. We don't have weeks. We have days. Then what do I do?" "You get more evidence," Nina said. "You get something so undeniable that even Marla cannot spin it." The opportunity came the next day. My phone buzzed with a text from Marla. "Brunch Sunday at the Spotted Hen." It read, 10 o'clock. "You simply must come. The ladies from the circle are dying to meet you properly. No sour faces. We are celebrating." My first instinct was to throw the phone across the room. I did not want to eat quiche with the woman who had robbed me. I wanted to strangle her, but I remembered Nina's advice. Leverage. I replied, "I will be there." The Spotted Hen was the kind of place that served mimosas in mason jars and charged $18 for avocado toast. It was loud, bright, and full of women in floral dresses. Marla was holding court at a large round table in the center of the patio. She was wearing a wide-brimmed hat and large sunglasses. She looked like a movie star. She looked like she didn't have a care in the world. Eliza. She cried when she saw me. She stood up and waved. Over here I walked through the tables. I kept my face smooth. I had practiced in the rearview mirror. Calm, pleasant, the dutiful daughter. She hugged me. She smelled of expensive perfume and lies. "Ladies, this is Eliza," she announced to the table. "My bonus daughter, the one I told you about, the banker." There were 4 other women. They all smiled at me with identical, polished teeth. "So nice to meet you," said a woman with blonde highlights. "Marla talks about you all the time. She says you are a wizard with spreadsheets." I sat down. I unfolded my napkin. "She gives me too much credit," I said. Marla beamed. "She is so modest. Honestly, we couldn't have pulled off the move without her. She has been our rock." I felt the bile rise in my throat. She was rewriting reality in real time. She was turning her theft into a heartwarming anecdote. "We are just so blessed," said another woman, "to have a blended family that works so well. My stepdaughter won't even speak to me." Marla reached over and squeezed my hand. Her grip was tight, warningly tight. "It takes work," she said, "and trust." "Right." "Eliza." "Right," I said. I pulled my hand away to pick up my water glass. The brunch was an endurance test. I watched Marla perform. She was masterful. She asked about their children, their renovations, their charities. She was the center of gravity. She made everyone feel special. And in return, they reflected her own glory back at her. She was building a fortress of social capital. These women were her witnesses. If I accused her now, they wouldn't believe me. They would see a bitter, jealous stepdaughter attacking a saint. I needed to find a crack in the armor. It appeared halfway through the meal. Marla's phone was sitting on the table next to her plate. She had placed it face up, a display of openness. But as the blonde woman whose name was heavy with old money, something like Tinsley or Cece, started a long story about her landscaper. Marla's phone buzzed. A message notification slid onto the screen. I was sitting to her left. I had trained myself to read spreadsheets at a glance. I read the preview text before the screen went dark. "Sender JK, message inspector is asking about the basement permit." I stalled him. "We have a problem if he looks at the electrical." Marla's smile didn't falter, but her hand twitched. She reached out and flipped the phone face down. "Who is JK?" I wondered. 5 minutes later, it buzzed again. The vibration rattled against the table. Marla ignored it. It buzzed a 3rd time. Long, insistent vibrations. A call. "Marla." "Honey, someone really wants you," Tinsley said. Marla glanced at the screen. Her eyes tightened at the corners. "It is just a vendor." She said lightly, "They are so impatient. Excuse me for a moment." She stood up and walked away from the table, heading toward the restrooms inside. I watched her go. She had left her purse, but she had taken the phone. I looked at the women. "Marla is so organized." I said, "Who is she using for the renovations?" "Oh, she is doing it herself," Tinsley said. "Well, through her company, Win Renovations. She says nobody does it better than her own team." Her own team. I excused myself 2 minutes later. I did not go to the restroom. I went to the side of the building, near the service entrance, where the noise of the kitchen fans drowned out conversations. Marla was there. She was pacing. She was hissing into the phone. "I told you to handle it. Jasper," she said. "I do not care what the inspector says. You tell him the permit is pending. You tell him we lost the paperwork. Just do not let him go behind the drywall." Pause. "I am at brunch," she snapped. "I cannot deal with this now. Just fix it, and do not mention the lien to the title company. If they see the lien, the funding stops. Do you hear me? The funding stops." She hung up. She stood there for a moment, pressing her hand to her forehead. The mask was off. She looked tired. She looked desperate. I stepped back before she could see me. I returned to the table. When Marla came back, she was fresh as a daisy. "Sorry about that." She said, "Contractors. You know how it is." I smiled. "I know exactly how it is." I left the brunch as soon as the check was paid. I sat in my car and wrote down everything I had heard. Jasper, J, K, Inspector, Electrical, Lien. I pulled out my phone and opened the county clerk's public records database. I searched for Wynn Renovations, LLC. There were 3 hits. One was the incorporation document, one was the recent transfer of funds, my funds, and the third was a mechanic's lien filed 2 weeks ago. Plaintiff Core Supply Company. Amount $15,000. Status active. I stared at the screen. She hadn't just stolen my money to pay for the house. She had stolen it to pay off a debt she was hiding from the mortgage company. A lien on the contractor would flag the appraisal. If the bank knew her company, which was doing the renovations, was being sued for non-payment, they would freeze the loan. She was robbing Peter to pay Paul, and I was Peter. I drove home. I felt a grim sense of satisfaction. I had found the leverage, but satisfaction does not pay the rent. On Monday morning, the satisfaction evaporated. I called the credit union to check on the status of my fraud claim. "Ms. Perry," the agent said, "we have received your metadata logs. However, the investigation is still ongoing. Given the complexity and the familial relationship, we have to wait for a response from the receiving bank." "How long?" I asked. "It could be 30 days, she said. "Maybe 60. And I have to be honest with you. If the funds have already been withdrawn from the receiving account, recovery is difficult." Difficult meant impossible. I hung up. I sat at my kitchen table. The silence of the apartment was heavy. 60 days. By then, Marla would have the house. She would have the mortgage. She would have buried the evidence. I looked at my bank balance. It was still broken. My safety net was gone. Panic began to set in. It wasn't the sharp, adrenaline-fueled panic of the first day. It was a slow, crushing weight. I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed at night staring at the ceiling, calculating how many months I could survive if I lost my job. I thought about my car breaking down. I thought about medical emergencies. I thought about all the things I had saved for, all the disasters I had insulated myself against, and how I was now naked to the world. And then came the shame. It was a hot, prickly feeling that started in my neck. I felt stupid. I felt like a child who had been tricked. I had let this happen. I had let her into my life. I had showed her my weak spots. I had given her the knife and bared my throat. I snapped at my assistant at work. I cried in the bathroom stall. I was unraveling. I cannot live like this. I told Nina on Tuesday night. She was at my apartment, eating takeout on my floor. I am going crazy. I want to go over there and scream at her. I want to throw a rock through her window. "Do not throw a rock," Nina said. "Chewing a dumpling. That is destruction of property. That gets you arrested." "I need to do something." I said, "She is winning. She is moving in this weekend. She is having a party to celebrate her theft." Nina stopped chewing. "The party," she said. "What about it? She invited you." "Right? Yes. I am not going." Nina looked at me. Her eyes were sharp. "Eliza," she said, "you have to go." Why, I asked. To watch her gloat. "No," Nina said, "to give her a gift." I looked at the pile of documents on my coffee table. The metadata logs, the credit report, the gift letter with the forged signature, the screenshot of the lien, the photo of the text message. They were just papers. In a court case, they were exhibits. But at a party, they were a bomb. Marla's entire power came from her image. She controlled Gordon by pretending to be the perfect wife. She controlled her friends by pretending to be the successful businesswoman. She controlled me by pretending to be the benevolent stepmother. She lived in a house of glass. I looked at Nina. "I am not going to sue her," I said softly. What Nina asked, I am going to sue her eventually. I said, "But that is too slow. That is quiet. She can spin a lawsuit. She can tell people I am just a confused, jealous daughter." I picked up the gift letter. I need to break the narrative. I said, I need to show everyone who she really is, and I need to do it when she cannot run away. The housewarming, Nina said, grinning. I felt the panic recede, replaced by a cold, crystalline focus. She wants a housewarming gift, I said. I will give her one. I spent the next 3 days preparing. I did not sleep. But it was not because of anxiety anymore. It was because of work. I went to an office supply store. I bought a high-quality leather binder. I bought a package of heavy, cream-colored resume paper. I bought a red ribbon. I organized the evidence. Tab 1, the theft. The Larkline transfer logs. The metadata showing the upload from MW Home Office. The verification code sent to the old email. Tab 2. The forgery. The gift letter with the fake signature. A side-by-side comparison of my real signature from my driver's license. The affidavit of forgery I had notarized that morning. Tab 3. The cover-up. The credit report showing the attempted cosigner application. The public record of the mechanic's lien against Wynn Renovations. A printout of the text message I had transcribed. Do not mention the lien. I assembled the binder. It looked professional. It looked like a closing document. Then I wrote the letters. I wrote a letter to Crown Alder Mortgage, Compliance Department. I wrote a letter to Juniper Key Title Services, Fraud Division. I wrote a letter to the Briar Glen Police Department, Financial Crimes Unit. I did not mail them yet. I scanned them and put the copies in the back of the binder. This was not just an accusation. This was a trigger. I looked at the binder. It was heavy. It felt like a weapon. Marla wanted a performance. She wanted a perfect party with a photographer and a speech. I would give her the performance of a lifetime. I wrapped the binder in silver paper. I tied the red ribbon around it in a perfect, symmetrical bow. It looked beautiful. It looked like love. I stood in front of my mirror. I practiced my smile. It was not the shy, apologetic smile I had worn for 33 years. It was a smile that did not reach my eyes. I am coming. Marla. I whispered. I put the gift in a bag. I put on my coat. I was ready to burn it all down. I sat across from Rowan Pike in an office that smelled of lemon polish and old paper. He was not what I expected. When Nina recommended a private investigator, I pictured a man in a trench coat smoking cigarettes in the rain. Rowan was a man in a pressed gray suit with the posture of a choir director and the eyes of a forensic accountant. He had spent 15 years as a compliance officer for a major bank before going private, and Nina said he could smell a wire fraud from 3 towns over. He had my binder open on his desk. He turned the pages slowly, his finger tracing the lines of the metadata log. This is thorough, he said. His voice was quiet, precise. You have done the legwork. Is it enough, I asked? Is it enough to get my money back before Monday? Rowan leaned back in his chair. He took off his glasses and cleaned them with a microfiber cloth. In a court of law. Yes, eventually. But you are not racing a judge. Eliza, you are racing a closing date, and banks are like oil tankers. They do not turn quickly unless they hit an iceberg. He put his glasses back on. The forgery is the iceberg, he said, but we need to make sure the bank sees it before the ship sinks. He tapped the page with the gift letter. You said she listed this as a gift to waive the cosigner requirement, yes. I said, that is her vulnerability. Rowan said, it is called source of funds. Since the financial crisis of 2008, mortgage lenders are paranoid about where down payments come from. They have to prove the money is not a loan disguised as a gift. If it is a loan, it changes the debt-to-income ratio. If the ratio is wrong, the mortgage is unsellable on the secondary market. He looked at me. If you prove that this gift is actually a theft, or even a disputed transaction, the money is considered tainted. The lender cannot accept it. They will kill the loan immediately to protect themselves from a buyback demand later. So I just tell them I asked. Rowan shook his head. If you just call them, you are a disgruntled relative. They might delay, or Marla might talk her way out of it by saying you are mentally unstable. We need to trigger an automatic compliance freeze. We need to make it impossible for the underwriter to sign off on the file without losing their license. He pulled a notepad toward him and wrote something down. I made some calls this morning, he said. Just quiet inquiries. I have a contact in the fraud department at Crown Alder. And your stepmother is already walking a tightrope, he said. The system flagged her accounts for unusual third-party transfers, moving money from Wynn Renovations to her personal account. Then to the settlement agent. It looks like layering. The underwriter is asking for a paper trail. She is scrambling to provide invoices to justify the moves. She is faking them. I said, I know she is. Likely. Rowan agreed. But here's the pressure point. If she is flagged, she is on a watch list. One formal, sworn notification from you delivered directly to the compliance officer. Not the loan officer will tip the scale. He tore the page off the notepad and handed it to me. This is the name of the chief compliance officer at Crown Alder, and this is the fax number for their audit team. Do not email the loan officer. Email the audit team. I looked at the name. It felt like a key. But we need one more thing, Rowan said. We need to prove intent. We need to prove she is not just sloppy, but hiding assets. Why? Because if she claims it was a mistake, she might just get delayed. If we prove fraud, she gets blacklisted, and you get your leverage to force a settlement. He turned his computer monitor toward me. I ran a background check on Wynn Renovations, LLC. Standard asset search. I found a recurring payment that started 2 weeks ago. I leaned in. $75 a month to secure space storage on Route 9. He read, A storage unit, I asked. They just moved into a 5-bedroom house. Why does she need a storage unit? Exactly, Rowan said. Maybe she's hoarding furniture. Or maybe she is storing the files she does not want the bank or your father to see. I will go there. I said, Be careful, Rowan said. Do not break in. Just observe. If she is moving paper, she will be nervous. Nervous people make mistakes. I left his office with a plan. It was no longer about screaming at my father. It was about precision. It was about inserting a wrench into the gears of a very expensive machine. My phone buzzed as I got into my car. It was a text from Marla. I stared at the screen. Let us not embarrass your father. Families handle things privately. I know you are upset. But think about his heart. We will sort out the accounting after the party. I read it twice. It was a masterclass in manipulation. It was a threat wrapped in concern. She was using my father's health as a human shield. She knew I loved him. She knew I had spent my life trying to protect him from stress. She was betting that I would rather lose $20,000 than risk giving him a heart attack. She was wrong. I was not the one risking his heart. She was. I drove to a different bank. A small local bank called Briar Valley Savings, one that had no connection to Larkline or my father. I sat with a banker and opened a new checking account. I want to transfer everything. I said, every cent I have left. I changed my phone number. I changed my email passwords. I set up 2-factor authentication on everything, using an authenticator app, not SMS. I locked down my credit reports with all 3 bureaus. I was closing the blast doors. When I got home, my father called. I let it go to voicemail. He called again. I answered. Eliza. He said. His voice sounded thin, stretched tight like a wire. Hello, Dad. Please, he said. Marla is very upset. She says you are threatening to call the police. I am not threatening. Dad, I am filing a report. Those are different things. You cannot. He said, Eliza, listen to me. If you do this, the financing falls through. We lose the deposit. We lose the house. Marla says she can fix the money thing later. She just needs time. She stole from me. Dad, I said. She borrowed it, he cried. It is just money. Eliza, why are you choosing money over your family? The question hung in the air, heavy and toxic. I am not choosing money. I said, I am choosing the truth. You are the one choosing a lie because it is easier than admitting you married a thief. There was silence on the line, then a soft, ragged sound. He was crying. She is good to me. Eliza, he whispered. She takes care of me. Please, just let it go. For me, just this once. I closed my eyes. I pictured my father as he used to be, the man who sat at the kitchen table helping me with my math homework, the man who made pancakes on Sundays. I realized then that I was mourning him. He was not dead, but the father I needed, the father who would protect me, was gone. He had been replaced by this frightened, diminished man who was willing to sacrifice his daughter to keep the peace. I cannot do that. Dad, I said. Eliza, I have to go. I hung up. I sat on my couch and cried for 10 minutes. I cried for the loss of my family. I cried for the little girl who thought her dad was a superhero. Then I washed my face. I put on my coat. I had work to do. I drove to the secure space storage facility on Route 9. It was a bleak, industrial row of orange metal doors behind a chain-link fence. I parked across the street, in the lot of a tire shop. I had Rowan's binoculars. He had lent them to me with a small, grim smile, and I waited. It was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The sky was turning a bruised purple. I watched the gate. Cars came and went. A truck with a mattress. A sedan full of boxes. At 4:45, a white luxury SUV turned into the lot. Marla. I raised the binoculars. She was wearing a trench coat, belted tight, and sunglasses. Even though the sun had set, she looked frantic. She punched the code into the keypad without looking at it. The gate slid open. She drove to unit number 412. Rowan had found the unit number on the invoice. She got out of the car. She opened the trunk. She pulled out a heavy banker's box. She unlocked the roll-up door and shoved the box inside. Then she waited. She leaned against the car, checking her phone. She was tapping her foot. 10 minutes later, a beat-up pickup truck pulled up next to her. A man got out. He was short, thick-set, wearing a canvas jacket and a baseball cap. He did not look like a contractor. He looked like someone who fixed problems that could not be fixed legally. I focused the binoculars. It was the man I had seen vaguely in the background of her social media photos, usually blurred out. Jasper Keene, J.K. They stood close together. Marla was talking fast, using her hands. She pointed to the storage unit. She pointed to her phone. Jasper shook his head. He looked angry. He spat on the ground. Marla reached into her purse. She pulled out an envelope. It was thick, cash. Jasper took the envelope. He counted it right there in the parking lot. He nodded. He reached into the back of his truck and pulled out a clipboard. He handed it to Marla. She signed something against the hood of her car. Then he got back in his truck and drove away. Marla stood there for a moment. She looked around, scanning the empty rows of units. Her gaze swept over the fence, toward where I was parked. I ducked. My heart hammered against my ribs. When I looked up, she was getting into her SUV. She drove out fast, tires squealing on the asphalt. I lowered the binoculars. She was paying people off. She was hiding documents. She was running a shell game, and she was running out of time. I started my car. Rowan was right. I did not need to scream. I did not need to make a scene at the party that would make me look crazy. I needed to drop the truth in front of an audience, and I needed to do it in a way that she could not spin. If I accused her privately, she would lie. If I accused her to my father, he would cover his ears. But if I handed her the evidence in front of the Briar Glen Circle, in front of the neighbors she was trying to impress, in front of the photographer she had hired to document her triumph, she would have to open it. She would have to react, and the bank would be watching. I spent the next 2 days preparing the gift. I did not just put the papers in a box. I curated it. I went to a stationery store and bought a high-end presentation box, the kind used for wedding albums. It was rigid, black. With a magnetic closure, I placed the binder inside. On top of the binder, I placed 3 envelopes. The first envelope was addressed to Crown Alder Mortgage, Compliance Audit Team. The label was typed. The stamp was canceled. It was a copy of the letter I had mailed that morning via overnight courier. The second envelope was addressed to Juniper Key Title Services, Fraud Division, also mailed, also tracking number included. The third envelope was addressed to Marla Wynne. Inside that one, I put a single sheet of paper. It was a copy of the affidavit I had sworn before a notary, stating that I, Eliza Perry, did not authorize the transfer of funds, did not sign the gift letter, and was formally disputing the transaction as identity theft. I added a screenshot of the text message. "Let us not embarrass your father." I printed it on glossy photo paper. I closed the box. I wrapped it in silver paper. I used a ribbon that matched the color of the invitation. I put a card on top, to Marla and Gordon. It read, "To new beginnings." It was the truth. It was the beginning of the end of her lie. On Friday night, the night before the party, I sat in my apartment. I had one final task. I needed witnesses. I called my friend Nina. "Are you coming tomorrow?" I asked. "I wouldn't miss it for the world." Nina said, "I am bringing a date." "Who?" "A notary," she said. "Just in case anyone wants to make a sworn statement on the spot." I smiled. It was a cold, sharp feeling, and I called Mrs. Higgins at the bank. "I know you cannot come," I said, "but I want you to know that tomorrow, at 2 o'clock, I am serving notice to the lender. If the funds are not returned to my account by Monday morning, my lawyer will be naming Larkline Credit Union as a facilitator in the lawsuit." Mrs. Higgins sounded tired. "Eliza, we are doing our best. Do better," I said. I hung up. I looked at the box sitting on my dining table. It gleamed under the light. It was beautiful. It was dangerous. I went to bed early. I slept soundly for the first time in a week. I dreamed of a house made of glass, and I dreamed of the sound it made when it shattered. The next morning, I woke up at 7. I did my yoga routine. I drank my coffee. I put on the navy blue dress I had bought for the occasion. I looked in the mirror. I did not look like a victim. I did not look like a scared daughter. I looked like a woman who was done paying for other people's mistakes. I picked up the box. It was heavy. I walked out to my car. The sun was shining. It was a perfect day for a housewarming. The house in Wyndham Ridge was not just a home, it was a declaration. As I pulled my sedan to the curb, parking behind a line of gleaming luxury SUVs, I could see that Marla had staged the property within an inch of its life. The front lawn was manicured into submission, the grass a violently bright green. The porch was flanked by oversized copper planters overflowing with white hydrangeas, their blooms heavy and perfect. The front door, a massive slab of mahogany, stood open, spilling warm, golden light onto the driveway. It looked like the spread of a lifestyle magazine. It looked like success. It looked like the kind of place where bad things did not happen, where families were happy, and where money was endless. I sat in my car for a moment, the engine idling. I looked at the passenger seat. The black presentation box sat there. The silver ribbon caught the light from the street lamp. It was heavy, dense with paper and consequence. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. My face was pale, but my eyes were steady. I had spent the last 3 days crying, panicking, and mourning the loss of my father. But that part of me was gone now. I had packed her away in a box of her own, buried deep in my chest. The woman looking back at me was cold. She was precise. She was a supply chain analyst who had found a discrepancy in the ledger and was here to correct it. I turned off the engine. I picked up the box. I walked up the driveway. The gravel crunched under my heels. The party was already in full swing. I could hear the hum of conversation, the clink of glass, the low thrum of jazz music drifting from invisible speakers. Marla had hired a valet service, 2 young men in red vests who rushed to open doors for the arriving guests. I walked past them, clutching my box. "Eliza," someone called. I looked up. It was my father. Gordon Perry stood on the porch. He was wearing a new suit, a shade of blue that was too bright for him. He held a tumbler of scotch in his hand. The ice was melted. He came down the steps, his movements slightly uncoordinated. He looked at me with eyes that were red-rimmed and fearful. "You came," he said. His voice was thick. "I told you I would." "Dad." He looked at the box in my hands. He swallowed hard. Is that a peace offering?" he asked. "It is a housewarming gift." I said. He let out a breath, a sound of desperate relief. "Oh, thank God. Thank God. Eliza, Marla was so worried. She thought you were going to make a scene, but I told her." I said, "Eliza is a good girl. She knows how much this means to us. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had signed my name to a lie because it was easier than reading the fine print. I am happy for you. Dad, I said. It was not a lie. I was happy that he was about to learn the truth, even if the lesson would destroy him. He reached out and patted my shoulder. His hand was heavy and damp. Come in, he said. Come in. Everyone is asking for you. I followed him inside. The foyer was 2 stories high, dominated by a crystal chandelier that looked like a frozen explosion. The house smelled of expensive candles, sandalwood, and vanilla, and the faint, metallic scent of tension. Marla was in the living room. She was the sun, and the guests were the planets orbiting her. She wore a cream-colored silk dress that flowed around her like water. Her hair was perfect. Her jewelry caught the light gold earrings, a gold bracelet, and a diamond necklace that I knew, with sudden clarity, had been bought with the money she siphoned from my savings. She saw me. For a split second, her smile faltered. Her eyes flicked to the box in my hands. She assessed the size, the shape, the weight. She calculated the threat level. Then the smile returned, brighter than before. Eliza, she cried. She glided across the room, arms outstretched. She embraced me. Her body was stiff, a wire coil wrapped in silk. I am so glad you made it, she whispered in my ear. Her voice was low. For my ears only. You made the right choice. We will talk on Monday. We will fix everything. I pulled back. I smiled at her. It was a smile I had practiced in the mirror. It was polite. It was vacant. Hello. Marla, I said. The house is beautiful, isn't it? She beamed, turning to the room. Everyone, this is Eliza. My stepdaughter, the financial wizard I told you about. A ripple of polite applause went through the room. I recognized the women from the brunch Tinsley. Cece. They smiled at me with shark-like approval. Eliza is so disciplined, Marla said, looping her arm through mine. She keeps us all in check. Honestly, if it weren't for her strict little spreadsheets, Gordon and I would probably be living in a tent. The guests laughed. It was a joke, but it was also a knife. She was painting me as the drudge, the killjoy, the little accountant who counted pennies while the adults built empires. She is our little banker, Marla added, squeezing my arm. Always worried about the bottom line. But we love her for it. I did not flinch. I let the insult land. You give me too much credit. I said smoothly, I'd just like to make sure the numbers add up. Marla's eyes tightened slightly. She didn't like that, but she couldn't snap at me in front of her audience. Put your gift on the table. Darling, she said, gesturing to a long table in the corner piled with wrapped boxes, wine bottles, and gift bags. We are going to open them later. I held onto the box. I will hold it. I said, it is fragile. Marla hesitated. Then she shrugged. Suit yourself? Come, get a drink. Relax. You look so stiff. She drifted away to greet a couple who had just walked in. I moved to the edge of the room. I found a spot near a large potted fern where I could watch the room without being in the center of it. I scanned the crowd. There were about 50 people, neighbors from Wyndham Ridge, looking to see if the new owners fit their tax bracket, members of the Briar Glen Circle, a few of my father's old friends, looking uncomfortable in their blazers. And then I saw him. Standing near the French doors that led to the patio was a man who did not belong. He was wearing a suit, but it fit him poorly, straining at the shoulders. He had a thick neck and a buzz cut that was growing out. He held a beer bottle by the neck. Not using a glass, it was the man from the storage unit, Jasper Keene, J.K. My stomach turned over. Why was he here? He wasn't a friend. He was a fixer. He was the man who took cash in parking lots to hide problems from inspectors. Marla walked over to him. I saw the tension in her shoulders. She put a hand on his arm, smiling, but her fingers dug into his fabric. She was steering him away from the main group, trying to keep him on the periphery. She introduced him to a passing couple. This is Jasper, she said, her voice carrying over the music. He is a consultant. He helped us with some of the structural nuances of the renovation. A genius with permits. Jasper grunted. He looked bored. He looked like a man who was waiting for a payment. I felt a vibration in my clutch. It was my phone. I pulled it out. A text from Rowan Pike. I looked around. I hadn't seen Rowan come in. Check the patio. The text read, "Blue tie." I looked through the French doors. Standing outside, smoking a cigarette near the fire pit, was Rowan. He looked like any other guest, blending in perfectly. I looked down at my phone again. Jasper Keene is not just a fixer. Rowan's text continued. He is a silent partner in Wynn Renovations. His name is not on the paperwork, but he has been sued 3 times for unfinished contract work. If he is here, he is looking for his cut of the closing funds. She owes him. I looked back at Jasper. He was watching Marla with a predatory gaze. He wasn't a guest. He was a creditor. My father walked by me. He had a fresh drink. He was swaying slightly. "Dad," I said softly. He stopped. He looked at me, his eyes unfocused. "Eliza," he said, "having a good time." "Who is that man?" I asked, nodding toward Jasper. Dad squinted. "Oh, that is Mr. Keene. Nice fellow. Helped Marla with the thing. The basement. "Yeah," Dad mumbled. "Had to move some pipes. Complicated. Expensive. But Marla handled it. She always handles it." He took a long swallow of his drink. "I'm just glad you are not mad." "Eliza," he said, leaning in close. His breath smelled of scotch and fear. I was so scared. I thought I lost you, and I cannot lose anyone else. Marla says if this house falls through, she leaves. She said she cannot be with a man who cannot provide a legacy. I stared at him. She said that I asked. He nodded, looking like a kicked dog. She has high standards. Eliza, I have to step up. I have to be the man she sees in me. He wasn't a partner. He was a project, and he was terrified that if the funding failed, the project would be scrapped. I felt a wave of pity, but it was cold pity. It was the kind of pity you feel for an animal caught in a trap of its own making. "I am sorry." "Dad," I said. He smiled. "Misunderstanding me. It is okay. Honey, it is all okay now." He wandered off toward the bar. The hour passed slowly. The sun went down, and the lights in the house grew brighter, casting long shadows. The noise level rose as the alcohol flowed. I stayed in my corner. I watched Marla work the room. She was indefatigable. She touched arms, laughed at jokes, refilled glasses. She was building a force field of goodwill. She was making it impossible for anyone to believe she was capable of theft. But I saw the cracks. I saw her check her phone every 5 minutes. I saw the way her eyes darted to Jasper Keene whenever he moved. I saw the way she guided guests away from the hallway that led to the home office. She was managing a crisis, not a party. At 7:30, the music lowered. Marla clapped her hands. Everyone she called out. "Everyone, gather round." The guests shuffled toward the living room. Marla stood in front of the fireplace, framed by the mantel. Gordon stood next to her, looking wobbly. "Thank you all for coming," Marla said. Her voice was rich and warm. "This house, this home, it is a dream come true for Gordon and me. It represents a fresh start, a merging of lives." She looked at Gordon with adoring eyes. "My husband," she said. "He has worked so hard for this." The guests applauded. Gordon looked down at his shoes, and Marla continued, turning her gaze to me. "We are so blessed to have family here." She beckoned to me. "Eliza, darling, come here." I froze. This wasn't part of the plan. "Come on," Marla urged. "Bring your gift." The crowd turned to look at me. 50 faces, expectant and smiling. I stepped forward. The box was heavy in my arms. Marla smiled. She wanted a photo op. She wanted the visual evidence of my submission. She wanted a picture of the dutiful stepdaughter handing over a tribute to the new queen. I walked to the center of the room. The carpet was thick under my feet. Marla reached out for the box. "Let us see what you brought us," she chirped. "Eliza is so practical. I bet it is a label maker." Laughter rippled through the room. I held the box tight for a second. "It is not a label maker," I said. My voice was clear. It cut through the laughter. Marla's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. She sensed the change in the air. "Well," she said, reaching for the box again, "let us open it up." She took the box from my hands. She placed it on the coffee table in front of the fireplace. The photographer, a young woman with a massive camera, stepped forward to get the shot. Marla untied the silver ribbon. She did it with a flourish. Pulling the loops so they fell away perfectly, she lifted the lid. The room was quiet. People were craning their necks to see. Marla looked into the box. For a moment, nothing happened. She just stared. She expected a vase. She expected a silver platter. She expected a check. Instead, she saw a black leather binder. She saw the 3 envelopes sitting on top. She saw the card. She froze. Her hand hovered over the contents. Her back went rigid. "What is this?" she asked. Her voice was tight. It lacked the performative warmth she had maintained all night. "It is documentation," I said. I stood 3 feet away from her. I did not raise my voice. I kept my hands clasped in front of me. "Documentation," Marla repeated. She looked up at me, and her eyes were not the eyes of a mother. They were the eyes of a cornered animal. "Is this a joke?" "No," I said. Marla reached into the box. She picked up the top envelope, the one addressed to Crown Alder Mortgage, Compliance Audit Team. She read the label. Her face drained of color. It went past pale to a sickly, grayish white. She dropped the envelope back into the box as if it had burned her. She looked at the binder. She flipped it open. The first page was the metadata log. The second page was the side-by-side comparison of the signatures. She slammed the binder shut. "Eliza," she said. Her voice was shaking now, a high, brittle tremor. "This is inappropriate." I looked at her. "It is necessary." I said. The guests were shifting. The silence in the room had changed texture. It was no longer the silence of anticipation. It was the silence of witnessing a car crash. Marla laughed. It was a terrible sound, a jagged, forced bark of laughter. "Oh, honestly," she said, turning to the crowd. "Poor Eliza. She has been under so much stress lately. Work has been overwhelming. I think she is having a bit of a breakdown. She tried to close the box. She tried to push it away. Gordon, get her a water," Marla commanded. "She is confused." I did not move. "I am not confused, Marla," I said, "and I am not stressed." I took a step closer to the table. Inside that box is a copy of the wire transfer authorization form that you submitted to Larkline Credit Union. I said. Marla's eyes widened. She hissed at me. "Stop it. Stop it right now." And next to it, I continued, my voice steady. "Is the metadata showing it was uploaded from your iPad? In this house. Using a verification code sent to my old email address." The room was deadly silent. The jazz music seemed deafeningly loud. Marla looked at Gordon. She shrieked, "Do something! She is ruining the party!" Gordon stood there, swaying. He looked at the box. He looked at me. He looked at Marla. She borrowed it." Gordon stammered. "She stole it. Dad," I said. I turned back to Marla. "Also in the box." I said, "Is a copy of the letter I sent via overnight courier this morning to the fraud division of Juniper Key Title Services." Marla flinched. "And another letter," I said, "to the chief compliance officer at Crown Alder Mortgage." Marla put her hands on the table to steady herself. "You didn't," she whispered. "You wouldn't. We close on Monday." "I know," I said. "That is why I sent them." She looked at me with pure, unadulterated hatred. "You ungrateful little brat," she hissed. "After everything we did for you, after we welcomed you, you are trying to destroy us. I am trying to correct the record." I said. I pointed to the box. "The letter states that I, Eliza Perry, am not a contributor of gift funds. It states that the $20,000 used for your down payment was obtained through unauthorized access and forgery. It states that I am disputing the transaction and that there is an active fraud investigation." The photographer lowered her camera. The valet drivers by the door stopped moving. Marla looked around the room. She saw the faces of her neighbors. She saw Tinsley and Cece exchanging horrified glances. She saw Jasper Keene stepping forward from the back of the room, his face dark with anger. She tried to pivot. She tried to find the narrative that would save her. She is lying. Marla shouted. She is mentally unstable. She is jealous because her father remarried. None of this is true. She grabbed the binder and held it up, shaking it. This is just paper. It means nothing. I looked at her. I felt a strange sense of calm. The explosion had happened. The glass was shattering. It is just documentation. Marla, I said. I paused. I let the words hang in the air. And if it is not true, I said, then you will have no problem explaining it to the lender on Monday morning. Marla opened her mouth, but no sound came out. The phone in her pocket began to ring. It was a loud, jarring ringtone. She ignored it. It rang again, and then, from the back of the room, a voice spoke up. You better answer that. Marla, Jasper Keene said. His voice was gravel. That is probably the bank. Marla looked at Jasper. She looked at the box. She looked at me, and then she crumbled. The facade didn't just crack. It evaporated. Her shoulders slumped. Her face twisted into a mask of ugly, raw panic. She grabbed Gordon's arm. Fix this, she begged him. Her voice was a wail. Gordon, fix this. Gordon looked at me. He looked at the box. He looked at the wreckage of his fresh start. He didn't move. I turned around. I walked past the stunned guests. I walked past the photographer. I walked past the fern. I walked out the front door into the cool night air. I left the box on the table. It was the perfect housewarming gift. It was the truth. I did not get far. I had barely stepped off the porch onto the cool slate of the walkway when I heard the click of heels behind me. Fast, frantic, aggressive clicks. Eliza. It was not a call. It was a command. I turned around. Marla was descending the steps, not with the grace of the lady of the manor, but with the desperation of a woman watching her life burn down. She reached out and grabbed my arm. Her nails dug into my skin through the fabric of my dress. Get back inside, she hissed. Her face was inches from mine. Her makeup, so perfect an hour ago, seemed to be cracking along the fault lines of her expression. You are going to go back in there, and you are going to tell everyone it was a joke. You are going to tell them it was a prank. I looked at her hand on my arm. Let go of me. Marla, I said. She did not let go. She yanked me toward the side of the house, into the shadows of a large rhododendron bush, away from the direct line of sight of the guests still lingering in the foyer. You have no idea what you are doing, she said. Her voice was a low, vibrating growl. You think you are being righteous? You are destroying everything. This house, your father's reputation, my business. You destroyed it the minute you forged my signature. I said, I did not forge it, she spat. I facilitated it. I was managing cash flow. That is what adults do. Eliza, we move things around to make things happen. You stole $20,000 from my savings account. I said, you logged into my email. You impersonated me. I borrowed it, she screamed. The volume of her voice rose, cracking the facade of the polite whisper. She realized she was shouting and lowered her voice again, looking frantically toward the open door. I borrowed it, she hissed. It was just until the refinance. The appraisal is next week. As soon as the new value comes in, we cash out, and I was going to put it back. You would never have known the difference. I froze. I looked at her. You would never have known. That was the sentence. That was the confession. You never planned to ask me, I said quietly. You never planned to tell me. You were just going to take it, use it, and hope you could put it back before I looked at my statement. It is called leverage, she said, throwing her hands up. It is how real estate works. You use the assets available to you, and you were just sitting on that money. Eliza, it was doing nothing. It was dead capital. I put it to work, and then I saw movement in the shadows near the door. Gordon Perry stepped out. He was holding his empty glass. He looked like a ghost. He looked like a man who had been hollowed out by a spoon. He had heard. He walked down the steps. He did not look at me. He looked at Marla. "Until the refinance," he asked. His voice was small. It sounded like a child's voice. Marla spun around. "Gordon," she said, her voice instantly changing pitch, becoming soothing, cajoling. "Gordon, honey, go back inside. Eliza is just being emotional. We are sorting it out. You told me she knew," Gordon said. "You told me she wanted to help. You said she offered the money because she was so proud of us." Marla stepped toward him. "Gordon, listen to me. You lied to me," Gordon said. He did not say it with anger. He said it with a devastating, quiet despair. "You looked me in the eye, Marla, and you told me my daughter was generous, but you were just stealing from her." Marla's face hardened. She saw that the soothing tone was not working, so she discarded it. She pulled out a different weapon. "Oh, grow up." "Gordon," she snapped, "do not act like you are innocent. You signed the papers." Gordon flinched as if she had struck him. "I signed what you gave me," he whispered. "Exactly," Marla said. "You signed? You are on the documents. You are the co-applicant. If I go down for fraud, Gordon, you go down with me. You are an accomplice." I watched my father. I watched the color drain from his face. I did not read them. He stammered, "I trusted you." "That is your problem," Marla said. "You always want someone else to handle the details. You want the big house and the country club membership, but you do not want to know how the sausage is made. Well, this is how it is made. Gordon, we needed the liquidity. I did what had to be done because you were too busy playing the retired gentleman to look at the bank statements." She was vicious. She was cornered, and she was tearing him apart to save herself. "Hey." The voice came from the driveway. It was rough, heavy, and angry. Jasper Keene walked into the circle of light. He was holding his beer bottle by the neck like a club. He looked at Marla, then at Gordon, then at me. "Keep it together, Marla," he growled. "You are loud. People are watching." Marla turned to him. "Jasper, she is ruining the closing. She sent a letter to compliance." Jasper's eyes narrowed. He looked at me. "You sent a letter?" he asked. "I sent the proof." I said. Jasper swore. It was a short, violent word. He turned on Marla. "You told me the financing was solid," he said. "You told me the cash to close was verified." It was Marla cried. "It was verified until she opened her mouth. I have $30,000 in materials sitting in that basement." Marla Jasper shouted, "I have crews waiting to get paid. If this loan gets pulled, who pays me?" You with what money? I realized then that it was not just about the house. It was a chain. Marla owed Jasper. Jasper owed his suppliers. They were all leveraging debt against debt, using my savings as the linchpin to hold up a collapsing structure of lies. "The lien," I said. They all looked at me. "You have a mechanic's lien on the property," I said to Jasper. "That is why you are here. You are not a guest. You are here to make sure you get your check the second the wire hits." Jasper took a step toward me. "Listen, lady," he said. "You need to call the bank. You need to tell them it was a mistake, or what I asked, or things get messy." He said. "They are already messy," I said, and then the sound of reality cut through the night air. It was Marla's phone. It was still in her pocket. It began to ring again. Ring, ring, ring. She did not want to answer it. She looked at it like it was a bomb. "Answer it, Marla," I said. She pulled it out. She looked at the screen. Her hand started to shake. "Who is it?" Gordon asked weakly. "It is the lender," she whispered. She swiped the screen. She put the phone to her ear. "Hello," she said. Her voice was trembling. She listened. I watched her face. I watched the last vestiges of hope drain out of her eyes. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I understand. But if I could just explain." Pause. "No. The document is—" Pause. She closed her eyes. Suspended, she whispered. She listened for another 10 seconds. Then she lowered the phone slowly. The call had ended. "What did they say?" Jasper demanded. Marla looked at him. She looked at the house behind her, glowing with warmth and lies. They suspended the file, she said. Her voice was dead. The compliance officer received a credible report of fraud regarding the source of funds. They have flagged the account. They are canceling the closing scheduled for Monday pending a full internal audit. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush bone. I am out, Jasper said. He didn't hesitate. He didn't argue. He turned around and walked toward his truck. Jasper Marla called after him. Jasper, wait. We can fix this. I am filing the lien enforcement on Monday. Jasper yelled back over his shoulder. You better find some cash, Marla, or I am taking the fixtures. He got in his truck, slammed the door, and peeled out of the driveway. Marla stood there. She looked at the phone in her hand. Inside the house, the music stopped. The front door opened. A couple walked out. It was Tinsley and her husband. They looked awkward. They looked like people who had smelled smoke and decided not to wait for the fire. Thank you for having us, Tinsley called out vaguely, not making eye contact. We have to run. The babysitter. Marla tried to smile. It was a ghastly grimace. Oh, so soon. But we haven't cut the cake behind Tinsley. More people were coming out. The herd instinct had kicked in. They had seen the scene on the lawn. They had seen the shouting match. They had seen the consultant storm off. The illusion was broken. Good night, Gordon, lovely house, Marla. We will call you. They flowed past us, getting into their cars. Engines started. Headlights swept across the lawn, illuminating Marla's frozen figure like a spotlight on a tragedy. In 10 minutes, the driveway was empty. The party was over. I stood there, shivering slightly in the cool night air. I looked at the house. It was still lit up, still beautiful, but now it looked like a stage set after the actors had gone home. It looked hollow. I thought I would feel triumph. I thought I would feel a surge of victory, a vindication that would make me want to punch the air. I didn't. I felt a profound, aching grief. I looked at my father. He was sitting on the bottom step of the porch now, his head in his hands. Marla was standing a few feet away, staring at the empty street. Her back to him. I had won. I had stopped the theft. I had saved my financial future. But I had lost the fantasy. I had lost the idea that my father was just a victim of bad luck. I had lost the hope that we could be a normal family. Winning meant admitting that the people I loved were broken, and that I could not fix them. I turned to walk to my car. Eliza. It was my father. He stood up. He walked toward me. He looked older than he had an hour ago. He looked gray. He stopped a few feet away. Eliza, please, he said. What? Dad. You have to withdraw the complaint. He said. I stared at him. I could not believe what I was hearing. What if the bank investigates? They will find the other papers, he said. His voice was shaking. They will find the other loans. Marla. She leveraged everything. Eliza. She put up her other properties as collateral. If this house falls through, it triggers a default clause. He reached out and took my hand. His fingers were cold. We will lose everything, he said. Not just this house, the condo in the city, her car. My retirement account is tied to it too. She convinced me to invest. I looked at his hand holding mine. It was the hand that had held mine when I crossed the street as a child. You want me to lie, I said. You want me to tell the bank that I gave her the money. You want me to let her keep my $20,000 so you can keep this house. I will pay you back, he promised. I swear. Eliza, once the market turns, once she sells the flip on Elm Street, I will make it right. I pulled my hand away. You cannot make it right. Dad, I said, because you are not the one in control. She is, and she will never stop. Eliza, please. He was crying now, tears running down his cheeks. I am 65 years old. I cannot start over. I am terrified. I felt a crack in my heart. I wanted to save him. The instinct was so strong, it was physical. I wanted to write the check. I wanted to sign the paper. I wanted to be the good daughter who fixed the mess. But I looked at the house. I looked at Marla, who was now tapping furiously on her phone, already plotting her next move, her next lie. If I saved him now, I would be saving him for her. I would be funding the next fraud. I would be enabling the very thing that was destroying him. I cannot do it. Dad, I said. His face crumbled. Eliza, I cannot set myself on fire to keep you warm. I said, I spent 10 years building a life where I was safe. I will not let you burn it down because you are afraid to leave her. He looked at the ground. What do I do? He whispered. You tell the truth. I said, I pointed to the house. You go inside. You find every piece of paper you signed. You call a lawyer, not Marla's lawyer, your own. And when the bank investigators call you, you tell them exactly what happened. You tell them you didn't read it. You tell them you were misled. But Marla, he said, Marla is going to sink. Dad, I said, the only question is whether you are holding her hand when she goes under. He looked at me. He looked at Marla. He stood there for a long time. The silence stretched out, thin and taut. Then he nodded, a small, defeated nod. Okay, he whispered. He turned around. He did not go to Marla. He walked past her, up the steps, and into the house. He closed the heavy mahogany door behind him. Marla was left standing alone on the lawn. She looked at me. Her eyes were dark holes in the night. You think you won, she said. Her voice was flat. I didn't answer her. I didn't have anything left to say to Marla Wynne. I got in my car. I started the engine. I drove away from Wyndham Ridge, past the manicured lawns and the perfect facades. I drove back to my apartment. It was quiet. It was small. It smelled of lemon cleaner and peace. I sat on my couch. I did not turn on the lights. I waited for the police. I waited for the sirens. I waited for the dramatic climax that happens in movies. But real life is not a movie. Real life is paperwork. At 9 o'clock the next morning, my phone buzzed. It was an email. From Crown Alder Mortgage, Fraud Compliance Division. Subject case, 89902-B, Perry/Wynne, transaction. Inquiry. I opened it. Dear Ms. Perry, we have received your affidavit regarding the unauthorized transfer of funds and the dispute of gift documentation. A formal fraud investigation has been opened. Your claim has been logged with our internal audit team and reported to the relevant credit bureaus. Please be advised that the loan application associated with this file has been suspended indefinitely. An investigator will be contacting you within 3 business days to schedule a formal interview. It was slow. It was official. It was unstoppable. I put the phone down. I walked to the window and looked out at the street. The world looked exactly the same as it had yesterday. The sun was shining. The traffic was moving. But everything had changed. I had lost my money for now. I had lost my father maybe forever. But as I stood there, breathing in the silence of my own home, I realized what I had kept. I had kept my name. I had kept my integrity. And I had kept the one thing Marla could never steal. No matter how hard she tried, I had kept my freedom. And that was worth every penny. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope Eliza's journey resonated with you. It's a heavy reminder that sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are the ones with the people we love the most. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. Please leave a comment down below with your country or city. It is always amazing to see how far these stories travel. And if you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to Revenge Stories so you do not miss the next episode. What would you have done if you were in Eliza's shoes? Would you have saved your father? Or would you have let the house of cards fall? Share your thoughts in the comments in English. I read every single one. Until next time, stay safe and keep your passwords secure.